Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
One of these days, yeah, you meow at a cat and the cat just goes ha ha back at you, or like makes some sort of weird man sound.
Stranger Things. Yeah, I do talk about Stranger Things.
Oh, that's great. Movie Cronenberg.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing Cronenberg.
That's right, baby.
Yeah.
How do you usually start these? I mean, I listen to every episode,
you
but I
usually
still
start
forget.
with like some bullshit banter like this, like this banter that's happening.
Oh, okay.
And then you say, and then we go, hi everybody.
I say, hi everybody. Hey, hello, human peoples. Welcome.
And I say, my name is David Bell.
My name is Michael Swaim.
And we just watched Crimes of the Future.
That's
and then
right.
we do some sort of bit here so I can cut to the trailer.
It's
like
just
some sort
the
of punctuation.
Fleshy tip of the Cronenberg.
Perfect.
We've all felt that the body was empty. Empty of meaning. And we've wanted to confirm that, so that we could fill it with meaning.
The world is a much more dangerous place now that pain has all but disappeared.
Surgery is sex, isn't it?
Is it?
You know it is. Surgery is the new sex.
Okay, and now we start the episode.
Wonderful. Now I'm comfy. Now I'm comfortable.
Okay, Michael, thank you for being on.
Of course. I'm sitting on Tom's throne of flesh and skulls. It's weird,
Exactly.
but it makes me feel powerful.
Right. This was, Tom's out, Tom's moving. I explained this on the Hypecast. And nothing's actually coming out this weekend that I saw. I think there's a few like comedies and crap. Yeah. But I knew you had seen this movie.
Seen it twice now, Dave. Which was actually, I think I have interesting thoughts because of that, for sure.
Okay, good. Yeah. This is my first time seeing it. It came out fairly recently. Mm-hmm. This is, David Cronenberg's first movie in like 6 years, I want to say.
Yeah. Well,
something like that.
No. Possessor was
first
his
original.
Child. Right.
Yeah, Possessor was Brandon Cronenberg, his son. And this is very Cronenberg. This is Cronenberg doing his Cronenbergiest, right?
Well, you could tell from the trailer immediately that you're like, it's almost his Tim Burton, or like this is the most Cronenberg art direction's ever been, counting other Cronenberg movies. You're like, wow, he went all out, which is appropriate, I think, because I'll say this right out the gate. Flesh Curtains, right out the Flesh Curtains. The first time I watched this, I felt the need to watch it again when you asked me to cover it, because even though I saw it, 3 weeks ago, it didn't resonate with me to a point where I remembered each plot turn. And it didn't. And then the second time watching it, I realized, which is funny that I didn't realize it the first time because it's not that subtle, that it's Cronenberg's, hey, I'm going to talk about myself and my own art and my artistic process movie. And now I do remember every tiny plot beat because they all make sense, because you're like, of course Cronenberg would think that about art. Like, I understand the underlying mechanism of it now, which is good because I can talk about it for an hour.
Okay, good. Yeah, it definitely feels to me like Cronenberg commenting that I had like that shower realization this morning where it was like, oh, it is about that, isn't it? Because he's constantly talking about other attempts, the ear guy and stuff like that, where it's almost him being like, it almost felt like a commentary on like movies like Mandy and Color Out of Space and like that, like that body horror that's kind of come back. and it's almost like Cronenberg commenting on that stuff.
Not almost. Like, I think there's moments where it becomes really blatant. For example, if you just say in a nutshell, which we should at this time, the premise is that Viggo Mortensen plays a guy who, in his sleep, when he dreams, has great pain because his body is forming these new, almost cancerous organs that are mysterious and have functions that humans can't even comprehend yet, but are destined to lead us to a new understanding as a people. And he shapes them through the tattoo process and cuts them out of himself and displays them for the world, and that is his art, right? So those are Cronenberg movies. He's saying my movies are these gross, cancerous things, but they came from me and I love them, and here, look at them.
Right. And he talks about a world where it's weird. It's a world where, from what I can tell, is the status quo is that, yes, we should rip these out, right? It's like a dystopian society where there's like a rebel group that's accepting the new organs or accepting the evolution as being a correction of human kind of human waste, and we that's a slow reveal throughout, versus a government, and I'm going to apologize for the cat meowing. Yeah. That's like, that almost embraces him, and he's an agent for them because they think we want to keep what's quote unquote human, and we're going to tamp down anything abnormal.
Which I also think is actually one of the most interesting commentaries the movie makes, because as you alluded to, Saul Tenser, Viggo Mortensen, turns out to be a tool of the establishment, and not only that, but the establishment interprets his art as a statement pro the status quo, which is which is so funny because he says, I'm just doing what I do. I'm afraid of everything. I'm expressing my rage. I feel like my body's betraying me. It's painful. I'm expressing that. And it's so funny that the status quo system is able to subsume that and say, yeah, we see what you're doing. You agree with us. And the terrorists are able to go, we see what your art really means. You agree with us. And I bet that's a situation Cronenberg and a lot of artists at that level find themselves in, where whoever they're talking to will repurpose their art for their own agenda.
It's Rage Against the Machine, right? And conservatives being like, I can't. Yeah, and it's like, you do realize what this is about, right? Whereas it does seem like so they have Viggo kind of state at one point what his view is, though, which is that he does hate these abnormalities and he wants them out of his body.
And that troubled me until I remembered that even though it's Cronenberg, it's still a traditional movie. He changes by the end, right? He flips.
Yes, he embraces it by the end because he has no choice. So like we should get into like we've kind of summed it up, which is that it's a world where like some humans have stopped feeling pain and getting infections, or rather most humans have. And it's a very disturbing revelation. And then everybody's growing these new organs. And there's the government or whoever in charge is like, this is abnormal. Whereas there's a increasing like performance art scene around these things, and people kind of embracing them and fetishizing them, and Viggo is a performance artist in that, and there's all this technology based on like, for people who have this trouble, like specialized chairs and beds that move with your body and help you do things like digest and sleep, because these people are now having trouble doing that.
I love, by the way, because I wrote the part in the Cracked book about you're pooping wrong and how you should poop, which is funny because now it's old hat. It was ultimately that you should use a squatty potty, and people do now.
Right, and now that's all the rave, yeah.
And, but at the time, that was like a fun factoid, new information. I love the implication that, you're eating wrong. You should actually shift your hips back and forth while you like pulse your stomach in and out, so the food can like wiggle down your body. The chairs are nonsense.
You got to be in a bone chair. You got to be in a bone chair.
It's got to be a flesh point bone chair. But it is really cool. I think it's really cool world building in the sense that we used to have. That's why it's retro future now and it feels dated or of that time. We used to think the future would be clean. That's the idea of the future would be inevitably cleaner and cleaner. And, films like Blade Runner. And I do think that's a high compliment. I would compare the world building to Blade Runner. It's very cohesive. It's feels real.
Well,
the thing that gave us an Alien was like, the future might be dirty though. This is the first movie I've seen where they're like, yeah, but there's a reason why. People don't fear infection anymore. Therefore, the future is dirty. I'm like, that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I like that too. It definitely, I would say this gave me late 90s vibes in the look. It gave me Dark City vibes, Existence, 13th Floor, even, where it's like weird, it's like futurist technology that doesn't quite make sense on purpose, where it's like, it's alien in nature as well. It's very Cronenberg.
Right.
And the look of it is very dingy, that dingy, dark, like we're in the Matrix look.
Also, much like Dark City, the main characters can't speak without weird pauses. Vigo, because he has this coughing disease. And then this time, second time through, I really noticed the guy who I keep thinking is the dude from Brazil, but it's not. It's the new younger version of him.
You're right. That does look like the dude from Brazil
who runs the registry clinic. Does such a weird vocal choice, which is effective, and I'm sure he worked on it with Cronenberg. But who doesn't work for me is Timlin. Timlin's manner of speaking feels dumb and theatrical.
Which one's Timlin? Is that Kristen Stewart?
That's Kristen Stewart. Yeah, and
Kristen
I think everyone intentionally made a weird choice with their speech, and I think Cronenberg encouraged that, so I'm not blaming Kristen Stewart for being a bad actor, but I did think Timlin talked like a friggin' weirdo. It felt out of place.
Right. I've said this before. I think Kristen Stewart, when I saw she was in this, I felt happy for her because I don't know anything about her, but knowing her history and the films she likes and stuff, I think this was a dream of hers. I think she just screams, I want to be in a Cronenberg film.
Right.
And she got to be. And so, she plays like a creep. She's like weird and creepy.
Well, so is the registrar guy. I wish I remembered it.
I guess he came off a little more natural because, again, I think it's their characters. Like, she's like more into the rules and like a little like off. She's a little more off than him.
Cutting into me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do both. I think through his actions, he shows they're both creeps, or at least they fulfill the function, right, of hypocrisy. Right. Bureaucratic hypocrisy, because they run this system that's meant to track so that we can stop the emergence of neo-organs, track all the neo-organs in the world. And at the same time, he is the head of the inner beauty pageant, which celebrates the growth of neo-organs.
Which is very funny because have you watched Dead Ringers recently?
No.
That's Cronenberg with Jeremy Irons as twins, as twin gynecologists.
Oh, I've seen that once because you guys covered it and I watched it, yeah.
Oh, okay. In that movie, Jeremy Irons keeps talking about how he thinks there should be inner beauty pageants.
Right.
So that is a very Cronenberg theme. So in this, there's literally an inner beauty pageant where they put a zipper in Vigo to prep him for this. That we never see the inner beauty pageant, do we?
No, because he Hunger Games it and dismantles the whole society before. I mean, we don't see that happen, but the seed of that is planted.
Right. So
my question is, do they still have taste though, and they can still die, right? So maybe that is the thrill, because he gets a zipper installed and she does oral sex on his stomach incision.
But there's no infection.
But I'm saying there's no infection threat. But he could die of his organs falling out.
He says to her, don't let it drip too much or something like that.
And my follow-up is, he can't die from blood loss? Like, just leave. I think he can. I think that's the threat. My real question is, he acts like he orgasms from it, like it's a blowjob. So my question is, does it actually feel good? Or is it the sheer excitement of, I could die right now, I'm putting my life in your hands, that makes me come?
So I spent the film thinking about that, actually, because the idea is this is a world without pain.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't feel. So like what Cronenberg is proposing here, because what we're learning is that like Vigo has all sorts of like pain or cut sex where they're like getting cut open in the autopsy bed, and he's feeling pleasure whenever he gets cut open and has these organs removed, and people seem to feel there's a part where a woman's foot is being cut open.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and so the implication
that was a moment where I was like, you can pan away. It can be as long as you want. I get it. You're David Cronenberg. Start the pan.
Well, the implication to me is that without the sensation of pain, they still feel the penetrative nature of what's happening, and it feels good. That's what's being implied, right?
Okay.
Is that
I just think there's also a reason
cutting your skin open without pain, and what they're realized is pleasurable, and that's what we're seeing.
I just think that requires some suspension of disbelief in the sense that clitori and wiener heads have bundles of nerves connected to pleasure centers that your organs almost entirely lack nerves, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, I do think it's all consistent. If you buy that, like if you accept the price of admission, you're basically saying, what would society be like if? And I do think sci-fi doesn't do that enough. And Cronenberg is so good at it, actually positing alien concepts. Like, what if pain was neutralized? Everything would be different in ways that would make the society seem bonkers to us, but make sense from that vantage.
Yeah, he had to add also no infections, because I feel like in the writing process he realized like
what about everyone just dying? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like no infections. He just like went back and added that to the line like in his third draft. It was like, okay, no infections.
Oh, but he was excited when someone was like, oh, so it could just be dirty then. And he's like, yes, it could be. It's dirty too. It reminds me of like a point-and-click adventure game I played once, designed by H.R. Giger, called Darkseed. It's just truly the Cronenberg levels are off the chain. There's like an infinity gauntlet surgery bug that they use to cut each other open.
Yep,
it's great.
It's nonsense. It's Cronenberg nonsense, is what it is, right? Because the chairs are it reminds me of the design in like Existenz, where it's like nothing looks like this. Or of course the surgery tools in Dead Ringers, which I recently watched, where it's all just like this nonsense. It's nonsense. I actually wanted to, so we want to keep talking about the actual plot, because it was the one last last thing is we haven't talked about the child.
Yeah.
No, I'm editing it. I'm not trimming shit. If there's a cat meowing in the background, guess what? I ain't cutting that out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you're playing through Stray, but can you mute it? You don't have to mash the button, the cry button. Anyway,
I love that button.
You were saying.
Shit. Okay, so this movie begins with a child on the beach, and the mom says, don't eat anything you find. And my note was, what kind of dumbass kid would eat whatever he found? And my next note was, oh, I see.
I bet that means something.
Yeah. Because the kid is eating plastic and the mom murders this child. And the movie is centered around, in part, the B plot. It's what we said with Vigo. And then this guy comes to him and says, I would like you to perform a public autopsy of my child who was born, or rather it's slowly learned that he was born, he's the first naturally born person with this augmented new organ system. So the dad is part of this like group that's been slowly doing surgery on themselves
to help the organs function, to help them along.
And what they've discovered is the purpose of the organs, which is to eat toxic materials. Plastics is what he calls them. And they make these plastic candy bars. And if you eat them and you don't have these organs, you die. You die horribly.
And it's
so
not
this
just
boy was the first
plastic,
one
to be
born
clear.
with those.
They call it plastics as slang, but it's all kinds of toxic waste and blah. It's basically anything that causes climate change, right? It's going to be the solution to litter and climate change and trash.
It's the equivalent of how we're finding worms that eat plastic now.
And they're like, why are we holding this back? We should be celebrating this. And this will be our big coming out party, is you'll cut open my boy and reveal he's a plastic eater. and we'll come out and we'll say we demand rights or whatever. You know, you can stop oppressing us. And I want to point out that I didn't pick up till the second time through. I'm sure you did because you're smarter than me, but I think it's implied that is what Saul, this is a common mutation that's happening. And Saul, if he hadn't kept cutting out his organs to be a performance artist, probably this would have happened to him.
I think that's what the ending implies, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the idea, is that this is what what they're discovering.
This is the point of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's basically a who killed an electric car idea here. And I will say the movie doesn't do a good enough job at explaining why the government wouldn't want this. But they're basically pushing against it under this like idea that it's unnatural. And I think my problem with that in this movie is they never really properly show that ideology.
The evil force is never represented really.
Yeah, it's
Cope
not
is
like
fairly
capitalism.
reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not depicted as capitalist. It's not depicted as like a religious fundamentalist. It's just like they don't like this. And it's like, why? Why don't they like this? What's it to them? And I know that there's a world where you could make that realistic.
All you have to add is a couple sentences of, well, it's that to them because they make money this way and now that would happen.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay, that makes sense. You just needed to address it. I agree.
Then, he never does that work in the
That's because he's more interested in the commentary on art, I think. So it's like scenes like where Detective Cope says, how can a tumorous growth be considered art? Where's the emotional shaping, the philosophical understanding that's present in all art? And they laugh derisively like, you just don't get it, man. I think that's... So in other words, that could have been Cope, that line, space, could have been taken up by Cope explaining, this is bad for society because of this. But instead he used it as he used that space for dialogue that makes us think about, art can come from places beyond emotional shaping and philosophical understanding. It can come from dreams. That's the kind of artist Cronenberg is. That's his statement of self. And I just think that's what he's more interested in. He's less interested in the cohesion of making there's not going to be a sequel. He's not trying to build out this universe.
No, he's not making a cinematic universe.
Oh, man.
That would be amazing.
We need a unified Cronenverse. That would be so great. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so basically this all leads to the child autopsy, which they show. And when they cut him open, his organs are covered in tattoos. And what's been established is that whenever a new organ is created, it gets registered or tattooed. And so the implication is that this child's body isn't pure. It's been fucked with. Right. And so it's not a natural occurrence. So someone sabotaged the child's
coming out
body.
party in order to like put a damper on the movement, which it successfully does. But we also get the impression that it's inevitable, right? The mutants will win eventually.
Yes, and the leader is assassinated. But well, that's what the ending seems to imply, because at the very end, Vigo is in his eating chair and he can't eat. He's just, throughout the whole movie, he seems sick. We've talked about this. Apparently, Vigo was actually injured while making this movie.
Oh, and he used it. He's like, let's roll now.
Used it. Yeah, like he wasn't supposed to be so crouched, and he is. So at the end, he tries the plastic bar, and he gets this big smile on his face, and then the movie ends.
Feel normal finally, or I feel not in pain.
This satisfying. So it's the realization of like, he needs to accept this new way because the old way is killing him. And it's the first time he's gotten to feel normal. Mm-hmm. And then the movie ends. And that's pretty much what the movie is. I
do remember thinking during that autopsy scene, oh boy, because that kid's like 11. It's not like a baby. Right. I'm like, oh boy, an 11-year-old's dead penis in my face. That is pretty edgy. And then they cut him open and rip his organs out in front of me. And I'm like, forget the penis. Jesus Christ. Like, you see an autopsy on a dead child.
Sure do in this.
Wild.
Yeah, Cronenberg predicted walkouts for this movie.
Yeah.
I actually want to get into the critique side of this, because we haven't actually talked about, like, how do we like this movie?
Well, as I said, I really enjoy the vibe and the world building, even if I don't, quote unquote, enjoy it. a hat tip to the incredible steady hand behind the, like, it's as clear as a Wes Anderson or a Tim Burton or anyone.
Right.
It's like, this is my vision. Do it. And you're like, I understand what you're doing, sir. I see it. You're clear. I see you.
Right.
I thought it was all right. I thought it was good. I do think I have questions where I'm like, well, this doesn't seem to be building the world out, advancing the plot, or be about art in a way that I can access. So I wonder what was that. Like, I don't know if it's just a statement on groupie culture or something, but why do Burst and Router get naked in that one scene? What is that about?
That was a very odd moment.
Is that Cronenberg just
sure.
saying chicks love me, they always throw themselves at me? Like, what is that statement if it's an art thing?
I don't know.
I don't know.
This was okay. So this is what I was getting at. Is I thought this movie was just okay. I'm not in love with this movie. I would say I saw a way better Cronenberg movie recently, and that was done by his son, Brendan Cronenberg, and it was called Possessor.
Oh, I like this more than Possessor.
Really?
Yeah. I think,
'Cause-
well, Possessor is just pure bleak. And it was clever, but it felt like a bleak slog to me. And I just thought this felt more like, here's some wild, crazy shit. And I agree with the message. Like, if we could eat our own trash, that would be good.
Oh, for sure.
So, and I'll say the second watch made me like it more. So I'm in that position.
Okay. Maybe if I'll like it more when I watch it again.
Still not great.
Yeah, because I guess what it is that I was thinking about my relationship with Cronenberg, and I realized I'm not particularly affected by Cronenberg. Like most of Cronenberg's films, the visuals, the Cronenberg of it all, never really grabbed me as much as the stories do. Does that make sense? Like Dead Ringers, we just watched for recently. It's more of like the story is fucking dark, and it's the story itself and not the Cronenberg nature of it. In fact, that movie is not very Cronenberg most of the time.
Yeah.
Or like The Fly. I actually like the original Fly better, but I appreciate the Jeff Goldblum The Fly.
The Jeff Goldblum The Fly has wacky shit in it, though, where I'm like, this is so 80s also.
Right, and it's all to say that I don't dislike Cronenberg. I just don't get that much out of a Cronenberg film in terms
really
of
like
the artistic.
Existence.
Existence I need to rewatch, and I really enjoyed too. It was very much part of that late 90s, what if we're in a computer thing that was happening. And again, this isn't a hit against Cronenberg. It's just that the realization to me was I don't get horrified or like viscerally affected by Cronenberg anymore. And I think it's because he kind of, his visual style looks very similar from movie to movie. And it's kind of like, Child Autopsy. Like, I get it. Like, I get that that's upsetting, as opposed to a movie like Possessor, which took this idea of like, what if someone's in control of your body and doing horrible things?
Well, and then it said, and here's the
like
worst things that could happen if that were true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like conceptually, I think Brandon Cronenberg took his dad's work and said, "Oh, I'm the new flesh now. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take this and roll with it, and really introduce horrific concepts, as opposed to like Cronenberg. Like again, it's not a hit against Cronenberg. It's more of just his use of his visual aesthetic plus the message that he does never quite horrified me." And nor does it horrify me in this. And I feel like that's...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I feel like that's what for a movie like this, that's all about that. It's all about him being like, look at this guy with ears on him. That's nothing. That's nothing. I cut out these tumors from my soul and I lay them out for you to horrify and interest. And like the fact of the matter is that I guess I'm not ultimately that affected by him. And so that statement felt a little flat for that reason. Does that make sense?
Totally, if that's what you're trying to get out of it. And I can see, if you're going for bleak or the idea is actually upsettingly haunting to me because it's so fucked up, Possessor wins hands down. This is kind of an uplifting message that art is good and ultimately humanity will expand the pool of human rights inevitably, and you can't stop that. It's almost as natural as evolution. I think that given, so I was looking for any meaning from it, not to be scared or horrified, and therefore
Right.
I was like, that's a valid message. And the metaphor of cutting parts of yourself out and showing them to the world as a metaphor for writing, it's old hat. I wrote a poem about that in junior high, but I spill my blood upon the page, right? But it's valid, and it totally is a smart idea for him with his aesthetic as it is to
For sure.
say, oh, I'm going to do that metaphor because I am a writer. My stuff is known for being gross. It's an apt metaphor, and I'll extend that into a movie. And I'm like, this all checks out to me as a solid idea for a Cronenberg movie. And the world reminded me of things like Alien and Blade Runner, which is like a good world then. You did a good job then.
Yeah, I that's the thing. I'm not saying I don't like this movie. I did enjoy it a lot. It's more of just like, it was a realization for me that I don't really leave a Cronenberg film with that like
Going,
pit
whoa.
in my stomach.
Yeah, no, neither do I. Did the foot cutting not make you cringe? Just on a visceral level.
That was
the
a
one
little
got me.
cringy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I think was part of it? This is another realization I had watching this, is that when you show that stuff, but the person that it's happening to likes it, it actually didn't affect me as viscerally either.
Oh.
Like the fact that they're not screaming in pain, and the fact that they're like, "Oh, I love this," it was like, "Oh, okay, well, they're having a great time." Like I don't know why
My brain doesn't do that
helped.
flip, because it's just purely, if that were happening to me, that would hurt. That's how it works for me.
Right.
My foot
for sure.
twitched. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I think you're right. I don't think I'm being completely fair, because I don't think Cronenberg's out to horrify every single time, right? Like you said, there's kind of a positive message in this movie.
If his goal, like even in The Fly, where I do think it should be, right? Because it's the horror of your body transforming, I'm still not that horrified. I'm more impressed by the effects work.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's more of like, wow, this is wild.
Wow, this is cool
like
and
that,
wild. Yeah.
I think probably recently, and maybe it's recency bias with this, but since I saw Dead Ringers for the first time, that's probably I found to be the most upsetting Cronenberg film. And that the reason
Because of the
why
genital
has
focus, or
no, because of the sad case of these
just
characters
how sad
destroying
it is.
themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like that's what I mean, is that like the actual body horror aspect, I'm realizing like I've never really walked away from a Cronenberg feeling that the effects of that in a like a bad way. And so that's what it occurred to me, is like, but that is possible because I saw Possessor and it did that to me. So it's really, I don't know. I think that's interesting, is that like, I think it's unfair because you go into Cronenberg now with an expectation, and this is a very Cronenberg film, right? We're going to map out the journey to the heart of darkness or whatever, and surgery is the new sex and the look.
Yeah. I also,
but that doesn't mean Cronenberg should be expected to do that, you know, with his art. Like maybe he's like, no, I don't want to horrify you with this. That's the point.
Or it's a side, if you're horrified, that's a side effect. But I do think you're right that by all indications, he does want to horrify you with the body horror. And I agree with you that it's medium horrifying.
Right. It's
just as a genre, body horror generally really plays in the written word form. And I usually think movies over everything, but I will say the idea of being metamorphized or against my will is more compelling to me reading something like Metamorphosis than watching The Fly, because your imagination of my bones inside me shifting is more powerful than watching it happen to Jeff Goldblum. It just is.
For sure. I also think, and I know a lot of people don't agree with this, I just think body horror itself is not, it's the same with torture horror.
It's not the most horrifying thing. Yeah, I agree.
No, it's not. It's a very practically horrifying thing where it's like, oh yeah, that would be awful. I don't want to be tortured.
Your brain just
I don't want my
thinks
body
that.
to change.
Yeah.
But but when it comes to like deep, like existential gut horror, I think I need more than that, which is why, going back to The Fly, why I found the original Fly, the cheesy original Fly, more horrifying. Because it deals with some
being small
emotional,
and everything's big is so primal, and
getting caught in the spider web.
Yeah.
The thing about the spider web scene in the original Fly isn't that it's not the concept that he's caught in a spider web. It's the fact that a character sees it happen and Mercy kills him and is horrified. And that's what it is. The thing about the original Fly is it's all about the people's reaction. How the woman has to Mercy kill the man version by crushing him, and she has to do multiple attempts. Like, it's little things like that. It doesn't matter what they show. And that's the thing is, Cronenberg is so over the top, is I'm going to show you the most grotesque thing possible. But sometimes that's not nearly as grotesque as something implied or an emotional, situation or reaction. And so like that's kind of what it is that he's so good at the visuals, the way like an HR
also he's
geeker
about
is.
slow excruciating we're going to slowly cut into you and you're going to watch it in this still static way where we're never unblinking, never look away, which is, what film is better at than the written word, because of the fact that it's temporally unspooled, is sudden, random, brutal, nonchalant violence, which I say because you brought in an outside movie that I haven't seen, or that I guess I did watch it, but I barely remember the Jeremy Irons movie. So I'm going to bring in a movie that I doubt you've seen. Have you seen The House That Jack Built?
The House That Jack Built. That sounds very familiar, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I might have heard it referenced by you.
It's Von Trier's statement on the exact same thing. This is how I make my art. It's gross, but it's mine. I'm showing you, something that's inside me. You think it's fucked up. Imagine being inside me. But deep down, I'm just like you. I'm a human. I want good things. I love people. I just think gross, horrible stuff is interesting, blah, blah, blah. And it's all through the metaphor of telling the life of a serial killer who murders almost everyone he interacts with. And if you like this, but you want to be actually shocked and disturbed, I recommend The House That Jack Built. I like it. But I like Von Trier, so... If you like Von Trier, you like Von Trier.
I certainly will watch a Von Trier film once.
That's
usually how it goes.
I watched it with my parents, which was odd.
That's awkward. Yeah.
Good, though.
Yeah, I remember, Von Trier. God. He did Antichrist, right?
That's right.
That was one of the funniest nights I had, was me and a friend. We were living in Chicago, and we just wanted to watch a horror movie. And we were like, oh, this is a new one. And I just didn't check. I didn't check to see who made it. Popped it on, like, yeah, let's put on a fun horror movie. And then it was just end of the night silence. I'm
and
like,
I do think
man,
it's an
that was a horror movie, wasn't it?
It's an interesting comparison because Von Trier also shows you the thing always. He doesn't imply. And yet, Von Trier, argue, pound for pound, predictably, I know it actually is going to hit me with a gut punch. Like, it actually is disturbing. So what's the difference there? Why not Cronenberg?
Well, all right. I think I know the difference, or I can identify the difference. I also don't think what Von Trier is doing, that aspect of what he's doing in Antichrist, the blood cum, etc.
Yeah.
I don't think that's particularly like. So what it
we
is
diverge there, man. I found that disturbing.
I'm not. Well, that's why I'm trying to word it carefully. It definitely made me go, oh God, fuck, But the difference is like that's the equivalent of watching like someone get hurt in Jackass. You know what I mean? Where it's like what I like the most from horror is when horror makes something normal scary, or it creates this like really emotional dread, something where it's like, fuck, that really sticks with me. Whenever it's like you're gonna get sliced up, that always to me feels like low-hanging fruit, where it's like, of course we're afraid of our bodies getting hurt. We all are. That's just something.
Well,
that,
Antichrist. This
and
is not
so-
an Antichrist pod, but Antichrist also has that dimension because of what happens with the baby. The reveals around the baby
that's what I was
are
gonna say.
disturbing. Okay, great.
That's what I was going to say. Is I was going to say Antichrist isn't only that.
Yeah, you're right.
It's and so when you can't help but to flinch with the physical stuff, but the emotional side sticks with you. I would say the thing about Cronenberg is his gore is more abstract and a little more superficial to me. And then going back to Possessor, that's why Possessor, it wasn't to me the thing about Possessor that wasn't like, oh my God, isn't like the physical gore. It's what's happening.
It's how far the character would go. And you'd go,
Yeah.
oh, you're that much of a piece of shit? God, I don't like this character. I don't like being with
Exactly.
this character. Yeah.
And so that's what it is that like, that's why like Eli Roth's Hostel, where I came out of that and I'm like, there's a couple pieces of gory imagery that'll stay with me, but the movie itself doesn't do anything for me because it's just like, look how we're torturing these people. And I'm like, yeah, you sure are. And that is an upsetting thing to watch.
Well, then I must
You know?
combine both your statements because the gist I'm getting is you're saying Crimes of the Future didn't really shock me with gore that much. And then you're saying, I don't actually value being shocked with gore that much. So maybe it was a great movie that wasn't trying to shock you, that was just trying to make a statement. Like, it's funny.
Right.
Like, what if
Also,
it's not
this is the
outrageous?
difference.
What if Cronenberg doesn't think this is an outrageous film? It's just a film.
Right, he might. But the statement in the film seems to imply otherwise, right? Is he seems to imply that he thinks his art is very
tumors.
disturbing.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I
but
wondered
here-
is that weakens it all is through no lens do I understand all the stuff about why Sadu is like, why does he kiss Timlin? Why does she have an affair? And there's a thing about their marriage and their sex life that never goes anywhere. There's just also extra parts. There's extra parts to it, much like a Cronenberg creation.
There is. It's not. I think narratively, it's not his. I don't know his
Tightest.
best work. Tightest. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But this is all to say the thing that makes Cronenberg, because I bring up Eli Roth. The reason why I kind of don't respect Eli Roth films, but I respect Cronenberg, is like. There's a difference in just showing someone get tortured and showing what we're seeing in this movie, right? Is that what Cronenberg does is it's H.R. Giger style. It's art. We're watching art. It's beautiful. It's really creative. It's really cool looking. Like, he's not just torturing people on screen. He's telling a very compelling story. He's telling it with very compelling visuals.
No matter how gross it is,
fantasy
no one would
sci-fi.
question that it's art. Like, it's still a traditional film. Yeah.
So like that's the thing is I all of this is to say that I quite like Cronenberg films. I just have realized over the years like his visual aesthetic doesn't really bother me the way he's hyped up to be. You know what I mean? Like, the thing he's known for is not the thing that I like about his movies, or rather I find the most disturbing.
Well, I'll tell you what I have never appreciated from him in the past to this degree is his actual writing. And what I mean is we've discussed at length like how we think it's a statement of identity and purpose for himself. But if you read it as that, line to line, some of these things are very true, hard-won wisdom that only a career creative would know, that I really appreciate being woven in. Like, I'll just read some quotes if that's all right.
Please.
How radical are you? Are you afraid of a little emotion? I'm afraid of everything. The bed is very quiet, but the bed is never wrong. I imagine he gets a lot of his stories from dreams. I get that impression from this film.
Yeah, definitely.
An organism needs organization. Otherwise, it's just designer cancer. Trauma is very provocative. I enjoy trauma. Like, you could hear Cronenberg saying that in an interview for sure.
Absolutely.
And this is like a recursive statement on the scene itself, right? I want to perform an autopsy. It's juicy with meaning. That's Cronenberg saying, here comes the autopsy sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, you're right, because that's the thing is all the sequences are coming out of his own brain.
Yeah.
Right?
He is Saul Tenser
you could
for sure.
argue,
Yeah.
you could argue he thought of the concept of a guy with ears all over him and then thought like, that's not actually that meaningful.
And then he thought, I'll
worked it
put that in the movie and have Saul say that's not very meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that where they're like, the ears don't even work, right? Like,
No, they're
don't
not hooked to his
function.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a guy with a bunch of ears on him.
I also, just because I'm deeply impacted by the right turn of phrase. I did find it haunting-ish. The line, if they found Brecken's body and did an autopsy, what do you think they'd find inside it? Outer space. Good answer. Creepy answer.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Brecken's dad says, I don't know what we'll see when we cut him open, but it'll be beautiful, sweet and real and beautiful. I'm like,
Right.
okay, it's almost too sweaty, but I didn't get it till the second watch through, so I think it wasn't too sweaty. Those are nice statements of intent. As an artist, I can stand behind all those things.
Yeah. I think personally, I'm more interested in this as a world, a sci-fi world,
Yeah,
than as a statement on art. I think that's what it is that like the meaning didn't feel like, it's not that it isn't complex, it's that it's not complicated, right? Those sound like the same word.
Yeah.
Where it's rather that like getting the meaning, it's not like, what does this all mean? It's such a mystery. It's like once you realize what it means, you're like, oh yeah.
Bing, bing, bing down the shopping list. Yeah,
exactly.
It's pretty clear.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think more art should be like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think art needs to be a puzzle necessarily. I think the filmmaker doesn't have to be like, look how much smarter I am than you, that you can't understand what this means. It's like, no, make it clear. But like that, I think what I always love about stuff like that is when that's mixed with the literal translation, right? Of like, here's what's happening in the world. And I guess I found the literal translation really fun.
Yeah.
That like, I'd rather get more of that ultimately.
Yeah, I definitely see other stories with this premise, which I never will because he's not that kind of director.
No.
But it's such a great world. It really is cool. And the idea of performance artists are like the stars of that. That's just funny to me. And yet still you never see a huge crowd.
No, I love it because it's like in the tradition of performance arts, it's just like a shitty location and a small crowd.
House music and people with drinks standing around awkwardly. Yeah.
They don't say where this takes place, right?
No.
I wish there was one scene where they just cut to like a guy in St. Louis reading the paper and everything's normal and he's like, geez, LA, man, it just gets worse every year.
Fucking Hollywood, bro.
Like it's just this one area that all this shit is going down.
Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
Why is it like that there?
Yeah. That feels like the implication because it isn't like they're saying like this is the hottest new thing and it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's just in this area.
Yeah.
There's not much, and I don't think this is intentional or unintentional or whatever. It feels very small, the world, because we're just seeing a small slice of it. So, and I think that's probably because of budget, a little bit. But also there's definitely symbolism in the world, right? Is the first shot is of a boat capsized in the ocean.
We hardly ever see the outsides of buildings even because they didn't want to pay to have artists conceptualize a cityscape in this future. That's too much effort.
Right, but I do think the message gets across in the visuals is that there's a lot of old boats in this. Whenever he meets the new Vice or whatever guy, it's like a boatyard or whatever. There's this idea of discarded scrap in the world, and
that everything's buried in trash. Yeah,
the kid literally eats a trash can, and so that's the idea, is to show this world that is dirty, that there's no infections, because that's us basically adapting to a dirtier world, I think is the implication, right? And adapting to eat trash, and they're just showing, trash is everywhere now in this future. So it gets the message across without having to show an expansive city or anything. So I don't think that's a problem, but it does feel very small, right? It does feel like he didn't have the budget or didn't want to or didn't feel the need to like show the world
around
it.
Oh, also
again-
Vigo's really good as always.
I think everybody's really good.
I think
Vigo is
everyone's
killing it.
good, and I think Vigo stands at like
Absolutely,
he
absolutely.
just shines. He's a very good actor.
He's really
why,
good. Apparently,
why
he
is
was going to play
squatting the entire time in that one scene?
squatting. That's
Squatting.
the injury. That's the injury
scene. Okay.
Yep.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, apparently he couldn't stand up. Also, apparently he wanted the role of what's his name, the guy who's not Brazil, not Brazil. Yeah, and Cronenberg basically, as he put it, harassed him into taking the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see why, because he's so good.
The cry smile at the end is just truly good acting.
Yeah. He knows how to Cronenberg it up. He knows how to be in a Cronenberg film.
I know
that's
it's a
for
little
sure.
late in the conversation to say this, but Cabin Fever slaps, and that will always make
Wait,
me
what?
like Cabin Fever, the Eli Roth, what he really made his
That's
name.
the thing. That's
with.
why I get frustrated, because Cabin Fever, I think, is such a good idea.
Oh yeah, and it
It's
is
a
truly
horror movie.
horrifying. You're gonna get
Yep.
sick, and you're gonna get a rash, and it's gonna get worse till your skin falls off. Like
And there's
that's
nothing
fucking scary.
supernatural.
Yeah.
Not a supernatural. And there was so much promise there, but then you realize that's his only note, is what happened with his career, right? Is after
Right.
that he's like, that scene where the girl's shaving and she cuts her leg open,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be all my movies. It's just flinch. It's flinch horror is what it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
horror designed to make you flinch. And it's like, I don't know. And it also ultimately, his work seems very xenophobic.
That's true.
Which is, yeah. So like, I don't know. I really liked Cabin Fever. I agree that movie is
Whereas
great.
Cronenberg is xenophilic all the way.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's like bringing the new flesh, the new
new
Yeah, he's
flesh.
into novelty. I do like the idea that he's all about evolution, adaptability, staying flexible. It's hard to stay mentally flexible as you age, and Cronenberg's out here making movies about how you got to be open and explore new experiences. You know, good for him.
Right. Yeah, Cronenberg talking about evolution is a great idea, a great combination.
Sure.
And yeah, you're right. It is about being adaptable to the new world, and that's probably an artistic statement as well, right?
And I
and
think a
Cronenberg-
statement literally about climate change. We're gonna have to
Yep.
adapt or die for sure.
Cronenberg's one of those directors where, like, the moment CGI existed, he was like, "Yeah, I'll work this in too." Like, it reminds me of Romero. Like, Romero never shied away from new technology. He would just go, "Oh, you can do CGI zombies now? Yeah, I'll do some of that too."
Coen
I'll
Brothers,
do the
first
practical
directors to ever edit a film entirely on software, or in Final Cut rather than
Right.
the standard at the time.
Right. It's the digital cameras. Is when like people like Tarantino are like, "No, film," and it's like, why though? Like, this is cheaper. It's film. It's you could still tell your stories this way. I like any director like that who's not a snob, who just adapts. And like Cronenberg, like he's not out, at least as far as I know, he's not out there being like, these Marvel things. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't care about that shit. Because he's always been indie, he's always been fringe. So he's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing my stuff over here.
Yeah,
I'm over here
Deakins
being
also
Cronenberg.
famously is like,
Yeah.
they were like, or gets asked, do you bemoan, you've overseen the death of film at stock? And he's like, whatever tool they hand me, I film the thing with that. It's all good.
Right.
Yeah.
I really like
Nothing
that attitude.
fancy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with these old auteur filmmakers, where it's like clear that they don't actually have an ego, where like, or at least rather, they're very good at keeping their egos in check.
Sure. Yeah. You got to have the ego to believe that it's okay for 110 people to all work all day to make your stupid thing.
Right.
But hopefully that's where the limit of your ego ends. Like, hopefully in exchange for that, you're super grateful and nice because you understand how lucky you are.
Right.
And I think
And
some
Lord-
directors are that. And Cronenberg seems to be a delight to work with from everything I've understood.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've only heard
That's
good
a-
things about Cronenberg. Have you heard of
That's-
Cronin scandal?
That was the thing. I haven't heard things either way.
Okay.
The only thing, in terms of Cronenberg's personality, the only real thing that always stuck out for me is that he is in the movie Jason X. And I think that's great. I think it's great that Cronenberg was like, I want to be in a Friday the 13th movie. Oh, you're doing Jason in space? Yeah. Sign me up. And some director had to direct Cronenberg Jason X and be like, is this okay? Are we good with this? And Cronenberg just chilling and being like, yeah, man, do your thing. I'm Cronenberg. I'm here to act. I don't know. There's something I love about whenever like a really high profile artistic director appears in schlock, and that realization of like, yeah, they like movies too. Like, it's nice. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything bad about Cronenberg, certainly.
He's also a hero of mine because he just released, I think, his first novel, but he just released a novel at age 72 and said that like he's been trying to write this novel since he was 21. And I've been trying to write a novel since I was 17. So I'm like, see, I got until I'm 65. No rush on this shit. Yeah,
exactly. I also really like that his son it's like a family business now. His son's like, I'm going to do fucked up shit like my dad. And he like, I was a little like going into Possessor. I was like, I don't know, man. It's weird to just like do your dad's shtick. What are you, Jacob Dylan, you know? And then you watch it and you're like, but he's good at it.
Also, it's a different tone. It takes itself more seriously than Cronenberg, like you said. Yeah. That is,
I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember, we talked about that and we just watched. It doesn't feel like a Cronenberg film.
It doesn't. It's a sci-fi horror, but that doesn't mean, yeah, exactly. It has its own flavor.
And so it's like, shit, man, I'm really excited to see more Brendan Cronenberg films.
Yeah.
Maybe something that won't make me as depressed next time, but yeah.
I also would be, the premise and the way the plot unspools, which I won't spoil because it's not a Possessor cast, is really clever and impactful. Yeah. I think I just found it a bit slow paced for the mood I was in at that time. So I guess I should just shut up and not say anything. Watch Possessor. I objectively was like, that was a good film. So
yeah. Cronenberg films, both Brendan and David Cronenberg, you kind of have to be in a mood for, right?
For sure.
Like,
yeah.
And like, I would never in a million years, if anybody was like, I don't like his movies, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, why? You know, it's like,
there's any number of reasons. I don't like dark stuff or slow stuff or
And if you do find his visual aesthetic upsetting, which I don't that much, but like, again, that's everybody's taste, right? Like, I know people who can't stand body horror, who can't stand metamorphosis, and it's like, we all have phobias, you know. Some people don't like spiders, some people don't like this imagery, so like he is a very strong imagery that it's gonna work, it's gonna horrify people, and that doesn't mean, you know, that's just, it's whatever horrifies people. It's almost not random, but it's like it can be anything, right?
Oh yeah, for me it's that my depression will make me lash out at people and I'll ultimately drive them away and be alone, and then I'll really be depressed and with no way to claw myself out of it because I'll have no support. So, you know, random shit like that, like you would never think of.
I actually heard that with depression. Oh yeah, sock puppets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I'm sorry I've messed up your podcast. I feel like I've talked over you a lot more than Tom does. You guys you're in the pocket. Even because we do Star Trek, and I feel like I'm less interrupty, but I felt very interrupting.
I feel like I interrupt people all the time, every podcast.
And I don't care. Yeah.
Right. No, I guess what I'm saying is that I always, after a podcast, go, God, I interrupted them so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm never self-aware in the moment to like correct that. And so the fact that you felt that too is like, oh,
good.
Yeah.
Only once this hour did I have the wherewithal to go, oh, no, you go ahead. But yeah, it's like once an hour I'll catch myself.
Yeah, it's
otherwise
fine.
I excited to talk.
Yeah, at no point did I feel interrupted.
Great.
It's a conversation about Cronenberg.
Not even when the cat was screaming, huh? I felt interrupted for you when the cat was screaming. Yeah.
I wonder, people, let me know if you can hear the cat in these podcasts, because I'm using a microphone, and on Audacity, it doesn't pick up background sounds, but on Discord, which is how we're communicating, you can hear the cat. So it's weird. It's like, I always wonder, can people hear the cat, or do they just hear us talking about a cat that's invisible? You know what I mean? I have no idea. Also, I don't care to know. So don't tell me.
My new boss just found and sent me the sketch "Who Fucked the Dishwasher," and it just says, "Really?" question mark. This is a day I feared. Oh no, I gotta go,
so
Dave.
good.
I gotta go explain shit to my boss.
You gotta say, listen, we did a sketch about fucking a pumpkin, and this is the
You gotta understand the
follow-up.
roots of this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much. Why don't you tell everybody where you can be found on the internet?
Yeah, I'm still sounding the horn about one-upsmanship, the number one and the wordlet upsmanship, just because we moved. So we're over on iHeartRadio now, so you have to research for the name one-upsmanship and subscribe if you want to hear that video games podcast that I co-host with Adam Ganzer. To hear about 15 other podcasts that me and my friends are involved in, including Dave, in various capacities, head over to patreon.com/smallbeans or stick around right here for Tom when he gets back.
Yes, check out the Small Beans. We do joint ventures with the Small Beans on our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We have exclusive podcasts. Some are exclusive to Small Beans and ours. That is Star Trek: The Next Futurama and Spiel Boys. And then we have Fox Mulder is a Maniac and Tom and Jeff Watch Batman. That's Gamefully Unemployed or Small Beans, both on Patreon. And I don't know, that's as good as a plug as any, right?
Oh, yeah. I'll plug that right into my abdomen so that I can look through a weird flesh jewel and see my Neo organ.
Yep, and I will have an orgasm.
Great. Good talk.
Yeah.